Continue our discussion on higher education and the state of it. Tertiary institutions hoping to go back to some kind of normality after protests earlier this year. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has also put a strain on teaching and learning. Let's talk more about it now with Director of Operations and Sector Support at University South Africa, Linda Meyer. Linda, good morning. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for coming in for us as well. So where we find ourselves now after all the protests, a sense of normality, is it possible? Is it possible to have a sense of normality at our tertiary institutions in any year, COVID or no COVID? I mean, this is what we've seen year in and year out. How do we get it right?
So the problem is not going to change unless we deal with the systemic issue. So if you just allow me 1 minute to explain what that is. So 60% of our students are NSFAS students and they're taken care of. 20% of our students can afford higher education and 20% are what we refer to as the missing middle, and they simply can't afford higher education. So every year, unless we find a systemic solution that will cater for this 20% of the student population that can't afford higher education, we are just going to see this unfold every single year. And allowing students back into the system by saying that their debt is just going to be deferred is just kicking the problem really down the line. The student debt now has reached 14 billion rand within the system.
So in terms of solutions for that missing middle, what's being bandied about? What are you guys talking about? What's on the table as possible solutions so we don't find ourselves here next year, the year after, a decade from now as well?
So the only viable solution at the moment is an income contingency loan, so low interest loan that is given to this missing middle student grouping. And it would mean that it is income contingent. So once somebody finds a job, there would be a minimum threshold. So you wouldn't start paying back, so for example, unless you're earning 12,000 rand a month, and there would be a cap on the amount that is paid back. But unless these students have options available to them, they're left with very little option but to protest to get access into the higher education system.
Right, so I was chatting to Professor Nico Kluti just earlier, and you know him, you know his writings, yes. You know how he feels about this. The feeling there was that NSFAS doesn't work. We need to have a different model that works. And also the problem was that promise by then President Jacob Zuma of free education, which came in the middle of his own political battles within his party. Many saw that as, you know, him just sort of sabotaging his own party and saying, take that as you want to kick me out, you know, that kind of thing. And that's what students have clung to. So how do we make sense? How do we help them sort of, you know, make sense of all of that? And then it can't happen. It really can't happen like that for everybody at the moment. And in terms of NSFAS as well, you seem to think it'll work. And other critics say it's not the ideal.
So NSFAS is the ideal for the poor students. We must remember that almost 70% of the students that are NSFAS beneficiaries come from SASSA households. So they have no other options. This is the only option to enter the higher education system. NSFAS costs us in the region of 43 billion rand per year. And as I say to everyone, as much as you say this is not a sustainable system, the most unsustainable system in the world is when we're not investing in higher education so that we are getting the skills to grow the economy. Because we are spending less than 1% of GDP on our higher education system, and we need to increase that exponentially. For the missing middle students, I agree that a 350,000 rand threshold is very low, and that students, by earning 1 rand more excluded from the system doesn't mean that the system is really fair, but it must be a manageable system. So what are the best possible solutions to us at the moment, and what is it that we can do to ensure that there's as wide as possible access for higher education students into the system?
We seem to have a little bit of a lull at the moment. Students, you know, things seem to be calm for now, but if you've been hearing and reading recently saying that, you know, we will get back out there, we're not completely happy, it's just temporary for now. How do we deal with this? How do we prevent the tragedies that we saw, you know, over the past couple of weeks as well? How do we prevent that? Because we cannot afford to lose any more time in the academic calendar.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a ministerial task team that is chaired by the Deputy President, the President of SAUS and the Deputy President, and then we have the Minister and the Deputy Minister that also serve on this, with the DDG for Higher Education, Dr. Lewin, and ourselves. So we've been working very closely to find tangible solutions, because we understand if we don't have systemic solutions for the system, we're just going to deal with these problems perpetually. They're perennial problems, and we need sustainable solutions. But I think that all of the stakeholders are realistic about what can be done within tight fiscal constraints, what is a reality, but also what will give students stability. Because we need policy stability.
Yeah.
We can't have the situation every year where a student doesn't know how they're going to fund their higher education and expect a different outcome. It simply is just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Okay, well, let's hope that there are some lessons learned, some good comes out of all of this. Thanks very much, Linda Meyer from University South Africa. It's a story we'll have to continue watching, and let's hope we're having a different conversation. It may not be completely solved next year this time, but maybe a slightly more positive conversation about it. Well, this is where I say goodbye.